Okay, we've met all the preconditions, updated it, switched over to Wicket if I needed to, verified IPv4 and IPv6. I guess just made sure the server was healthy. So we're ready to install DNS. Of course, checkpointed. I really appreciate that about virtuals. I mean, that's just such a lifesaver to go ahead and checkpoint. So we're going into YAST and to software management, and we're going to install the DNS package. That little thing you saw go by where it looked like it was pulling down updates, it was. It goes out and just checks that it has the latest versions of all the packages before we go to install. So there's different ways to install here, and what I'm going to do is I think there's going to be a series of videos here because I think we're going to need to do some troubleshooting. So I'm just going to kind of keep these videos to the point. So what we're going to do for this particular install is we're going to go over to View and we're going to go to Patterns. You might recognize this as this is what we saw during installation. Do you remember that when we installed? We had all these lists. And so you see we've got desktop functions, KD functions. But if we scroll down, we get into the server functions. And these are some quick checkboxes that make it easy for us to install different roles. That's the term we use in Windows, roles. In Linux, they're referred to as daemons. I think services could be used as kind of a general term to apply to both operating systems. So what they've got here then is they've got DHCP and DNS packaged together. You think, well, we're not going to do DHCP. We're not. And one of the reasons we're not going to do DHCP is that DHCP on OpenSUSE is fully functional for IPv4. But for IPv6, it defaults to the router. And so you don't get a lot of options for setting up IPv6 via DHCP on OpenSUSE. So we're not going to use that function of it. But it is going to install the binaries for both. But the service of DHCP will not run unless we enable it to do so. So here it went out and it grabbed all these. And there's quite a list here. These are referred to as dependencies. Look at that here. All the different dependencies. And that's one of the really nice things about OpenSUSE, about YAST, is it's the way that it handles installations and pulls together all of the packages that you need. So we're going to go ahead and accept that and let it go through its install. Didn't take long. Took, I don't know, 30 seconds. It's pretty quick. So go ahead and click Finish. Now, as you notice, it's not in the list just yet. It's going to show up here under Network Services, but it's not there yet. And you know, if we closed YAST or reopened YAST, it would show up. But what I like to do is I like to reboot. I do. You're thinking, well, are there other ways that you can kind of like get things reread or packages reinstalled? Yeah, there are. And I'll show you one of those when we get into troubleshooting. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and reboot my server and let it read all of the defaults for DNS, and then we'll be ready to walk through the wizard. So my server rebooted and we're back, and you can see here that both the DHCP and DNS modules for YAST are now, they showed up. Let's go ahead and run through the wizard. Okay. All right, so the initial page here, server installation, forwarder settings, and this is a configuration for us. If we bring back the PDF file, remember that DNS here is going to forward to DNS here, so it's going to be a forwarder, and here are the IP addresses for that, and then also it's going to host its own domain. So let's just do a brief thing here, and I'll try to be brief. We've got the cloud, and we've got the parent domain, bobstaco.com, and that's hosted by Cloudflare. It's a registered domain for us, and then we delegated to each of us different states, AK, AZ, ID, OR, WA, and those then are all hosted in Azure for Cloud DNS, but locally they're hosted, so Azure is, we talked about split brain DNS. Azure is your split brain, it's one half of it, but then your other half of the split brain is right here. But now you have control. I'm going to use myself as an example. I was assigned AK. I have control then to delegate below AK. And so that's what I'm going to do. It's going to be, I'm going to delegate. I'll have to do a delegation here. And we'll cover this in the video. I'll have to do a delegation for the child domain of dev.ak.bobstaco.com. And so we'll literally do that on DC1 in DNS on DC1, and I'll show you how to do that. And what we're going to do is we're going to delegate that then to LNX. And so over on LNX, when we create this zone, the zone itself will be usable, but it won't be part of the DNS hierarchy until we do the delegation. So let's go back and continue with the wizard. Okay, so we're going to use forwarders. That makes sense in our scenario. I'm going to go ahead and add our child domain here. You have a choice here. We could wait and complete the wizard and just have a basic, it would be a caching only DNS server, but I'm going to go ahead and add my subdomain here. So dev.ak.bobstaco.com. We have a choice of what kind of domain that would be, or read write, read only, primary slave. There's different terms that are used. Here we're using master and slave. Windows uses primary and secondary, but we do want it to be a read write, and so whatever, whether you call that a primary or a master or what, anyways, we need it to be read write. So we add that in there. Okay. Open the firewall to allow port 53 access. Let's take a look at the details. We do need to make a note here, and I'm going to jot this down on my notepad here, that the firewall has multiple zones, and I'll show those to you. Windows firewall has three. It has domain, public, and private. Well, there's about a dozen different pre-created zones in Linux, and you can have different services use different zones. And so right now we're set up to use the public zone, and I just want you to be aware of that. But I also want to show you where you can set that and where you can make changes to that, but that'll come after we get DNS installed. Okay, the other choice that we make here is once you reboot this Linux server, what do you want to happen with DNS? And I want it to start. I want it to always run when the server boots. And this is where I said that the DHCP binaries were installed, but if the DHCP daemon or service isn't set to start when the server boots, then it actually won't ever run, and that's the current state. So we got the binaries, but the service for DHCP is not running, but we do want the service for DNS to run, and so we've got start on with the host. So here we've got an overview of what we've got. We've got two forwarders set. Those look correct, and the domain that we've created is dev from our parent. If you go into expert here, what that'll do is it'll take you to the screen that will be your landing page once you get through with the wizard, and that's what that's about. It doesn't give you any more options really per se. You'll see that, and I'll point that out to you once we get done with the wizard and we go back into the screen. Okay, so that's installed. We go back into it, and this is what I was telling you about. The screen that shows up here, this is what it refers to as the advanced mode. And so we've got startup type, firewall, forwarders, basic options, logging. Where are the log files? Additional logging. If you're troubleshooting, the logging can be helpful. Access control lists. Some of these things are useful. Like if you wanted to only allow DNS resolution from some domains, some subnets and not others. That's one of the things about Linux is it is so configurable. It's very configurable. It's also, I think, a little bit more complicated, right? I mean, what did they say? With great responsibility comes, with great authority or comes great responsibility. Let's apply that to Linux. With amazing amount of configurability comes a level of complexity. Okay, let's look at our zone here. This is where they go. And remember, a DNS server can host multiple zones. Let's go ahead and add a couple records. So we go into edit. Got our name server, mail server records. We don't have any. Start of authority record. And then here's where most of our work would be done. and the different record types can be found here. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to create a bogus IPv4. Just something that's recognizable. Doesn't have to be real at all. And let me also create a bogus IPv6. Okay, and I'll locate that, Before I finish this video, let me just go and show you the firewall, and then what we'll do is we'll reboot and we'll start some testing. But let me go show you the firewall. So remember that when we were in here, let's just go look. It showed us that the current firewall settings were to the public zone, and the blue indicates that the firewall has been opened up for DNS, and we just want to go verify that. So I'll cancel that. Let's go into the firewall here. So here are all those different zones. Okay, and it says that the public one is currently the one that's been opened up for DNS, and sure enough, it has. Okay, it's been opened up for DHCP v6 client and for DNS. If we go to interface here, we can say that it is currently set on public, and if you wanted to change it, then we would just go to change, and you would then pick whichever other one you wanted. We'll leave it on public. So when you walk through these, you can see that they're very configurable. There's just a few settings that are in some of them. And if you wanted to add, say that you wanted to switch over to the work zone, which currently has the DHCP v6 client and SSH, but you wanted to add DNS, if you want to switch to that, then you would just scroll down here and find DNS, and you would then add that and accept it, and then that would open up the firewall for DNS for that profile. And then again, you switch profiles up here. Okay, so I didn't make any changes, so I'm going to go ahead and abort that. So again, I've completed the wizard and I'm ready to start my testing, but the video is at 12 minutes, so I'm going to wrap up this video. I am going to reboot my server again because I did the wizard. I will show you how you can reboot it from the reboot the DNS daemon from the command line, so you don't have to keep rebooting the server all the time. But I'll do that when we get into our troubleshooting and a little closer look. So I'll see you in the next video.